A warm welcome to Disky Talk with Liolo. If you're tuning in for the very first time, I ask that you please do subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you've been a part of the journey, I hope you thoroughly enjoy this episode. So, on today's episode, we discuss all things Dstv Premiership action. I will start by looking at two most talked about encounters which were played this past weekend. That is Orlando Pirates versus Swallows and Mamelodi Sundowns versus Kaizer Chiefs. And then in the extra time segment, I will have a coach's corner where I have a look at the technical teams of those four respective teams. So let's then start with the first segment where we have a look at Orlando Pirates versus Swallows and how it played out. So that game played out to a 1-0 win for Orlando Pirates. However, let's have a tactical post-match analysis of that game. So Orlando Pirates will be represented by the blue team, and then Swallows will be represented by the red team. So, with regards then to Orlando Pirates and how they lined up for this one, they started with the 4-3-3. In the heart of midfield, we did see a double pivot, but that is something I will head into a lot later. So, in goals, they started with Mponchane. So, I must say that I was impressed by his performance, especially from a distribution perspective. I think he's very good at distributing the ball, and he did offer a bit of that defensive solidity at the back, especially in goals, because we do know how Orlando Pirates have been struggling in that department. And then their back four, Bandile Shandu started at right back, two centre halves of Hlatshwayo, Happy Jele, and then at left back they had Paseka Marco. So with regards then with their back four, I will start with Paseka Marco. Happy to see him back in the lineup. You know, I think he is, in my opinion, I think he's their best left back. He's the best option as the left-sided defensive player, especially considering A, how tactically sound he is, B, how he reads the game, and how he can also overlap whenever he has to. And also very comfortable in the final third when it comes to then making sure that he creates those chances for Orlando Pirates in the final third. He's a player that is well versed in vertical zone one. I think is very comfortable on the ball, and one of my favorite players within this Orlando Pirates side. You know, we did see that in that game he offered great stability, especially coming up against very fast players in Solomons and Saleng. It was always going to be very important that Orlando Pirates have a solid performance from a defensive perspective, especially in those fullback positions. And I think Paseka Marco rose to the occasion. And very happy to see him back. I think he should be Orlando Pirates' first choice left back. And then when we have a look at the back two, look, Orlando Pirates have had their struggles in the heart of defense, but whenever Jele has played alongside Hlatshwayo, that's when we've seen them at their very best. And we saw that Jele played very well, and look, he was handed the Man of the Match award. In my opinion, he was the man of the match, as well. He had a stellar performance, especially considering that it was his 400th appearance in Dstv Premiership football, which is a great hallmark for a player of his caliber. Also considering that he's 34, so he's not over the hill yet. There's still a couple more years, So going to be interesting to see how many more appearances can he add on. But with regards to the game, I thought he was very solid in the heart of defense for Orlando Pirates, and how he marshaled the back four as well. They were a lot more balanced from a tactical perspective, and Swallows really struggled to create clear-cut chances, and that's because the back four was solid, especially when it boils down to Happy Jele's leadership, and alongside him, Hlatshwayo. I've always said it, that Hlatshwayo looks at home whenever he plays next to Happy Jele. Moving then on to the midfield. So, in midfield, the double pivot they went with Goodman Musela and Abel Mabaso. So with regards to Musele, I think he also had a very solid game, very strong in the heart of midfield. And look, he is a player that is growing in leaps and bounds and will become very important for Pirates in the heart of midfield. But with Abel Mabaso, I just don't think he should be starting in the heart of midfield. I think he's a very good footballer, no doubt about it. But I think he then should be starting in this Orlando Pirates side as a right back. And the reason why I think he should be starting as a right back as opposed to midfield, because I think he's a lot more defensive than he is offensive. So in the heart of midfield, I just don't think that you start with a double pivot with two defensive midfielders, So if you start with a double pivot, I always believe that one has to be a defensive midfielder and the other can be a deep laying playmaker. So you could start with the Musele and then have Nkanyiso Zungu, who's a deep laying playmaker. That's how I would institute things at Orlando Pirates, because I just think that Abel Mabaso would be much better suited playing as the right back for Pirates, which would actually strengthen the back four of Pirates, because Abel Mabaso is very, very solid in this position. And at times we did see that Bandile Shandu would get beaten for speed. And I don't always think that when a player gets beaten for speed is because he lacks speed. Sometimes it's how you position your body. Sometimes it's how you read the game as well, and how you close down a certain angle whenever you're in a 1v1 situation. So I just think that Abel Mabaso's best position would be at right back or at centre back. But for this back four, I think at right back. So if Orlando Pirates then have Marco, Happy Jele, Hlatshwayo, and Abel Mabaso at right back, I think they would have a solid back four going forward. And I think that back four would predicate for consistency, in clean sheets, and also for tactical discipline, because I often felt that Orlando Pirates would lack that tactical discipline whenever they shaped up defensively. So I just think that Mabaso should have started as a right back, and then you add on another offensive-minded midfielder in there, as opposed to having two defensive players in midfield, because it limits Orlando Pirates. And to a certain degree, I think that's why they struggled to thoroughly dominate in the heart of midfield and to advance the ball higher up, especially when we look at vertical zone 2, 3, and 4. I think that's why they struggle at times, because you've got two defensive-minded midfielders, whereas if you get an offensive-minded midfielder or a deep-laying playmaker that's able then to find those penetrative passes through the heart of midfield, then you've got a lot more progressive passing from the midfield. And then when we look at the third midfielder they started with, we saw a debut for Untago Makubela, which I'm very excited about. This is a player who I think has so much quality and is going to add so much to this Orlando Pirates side. I think from a midfield perspective, he brings something that Orlando Pirates don't have. A bit of that progressive pass, B, very penetrative with regards to how he moves with the ball and with his runs as well. So I think he's a very, very good player for Orlando Pirates. And also, the way he's able to institute and play those 1-2s in the heart of midfield, also always looking to penetrate and go forward, and he brings so much creativity. So I think then he's the ideal player for this Orlando Pirates side. I was happy with his debut. Yes, a couple of mistakes here and there, but you could see that he's comfortable in the heart of midfield, and you can see that he's going to grow in that Orlando Pirates jersey. So happy then with his performance. And then when we look at the front three, they had Dlamini starting off the left. They had Pule starting off the right. But just to note, Pule and Dlamini would interchange during the game. And then you had Hoto starting as the false 9. Now, with regards to the front three, I was very disappointed, especially when you consider the fact that you have Mabasa on the bench. I don't understand why you'd start Hoto up front, and play him as a false 9, especially when you have Mabasa on the bench. Because what would happen is Hoto's natural instinct would always to drift out wide, and then Pule would come in. And that's what would happen. And then there is no focal point. So within the first 5 minutes, Orlando Pirates created two really good chances where the ball was put into a dangerous area within the box. But because you don't have a natural number 9, there's nobody who's attacking that ball. And that's to their disadvantage because Mabasa's sitting on the bench. If Mabasa's in, he attacks those balls and he gets those goals. So what would happen is, this is what you'd often see from Orlando Pirates. So whenever they were in the opposition half in Swallows territory, what they would do is they'd progress the ball really well. When it goes wide, like I mentioned, Hotto is a winger. He'd drift out wide and he'd play a really good ball in, but there's no one in the box. There's just no one in the box. And then the second cross within the first 5 minutes that came from Pasega Marco. A really beautiful cross which was put into the corridor of uncertainty. So the corridor of uncertainty is between the penalty spot and the 6-yard box. So he put in a beautiful ball into the corridor of uncertainty, and that is the corridor that you always want to play the ball into because that's where so many things can happen. That's why it's called the corridor of uncertainty. The ball was whipped in there, and yet again, there's no one in there. So then it became easy for Usbia to clear that one. But if there's a Mabasa in there, he attacks that ball and he gets that goal. So very disappointed with how that front three started. I just think that you sacrifice one between Pule and Dlamini. Personally, I'd sacrifice Dlamini and then have Mabasa start. Then you have Pule on one side and Hotto on one side so that you have a point of reference. The importance of having a natural number 9 is, I don't think South African players are conditioned to play in a false 9 system. Secondly, whenever we look at the false 9, I feel like a lot of people approach the false 9 in an isolated perspective. They look at the position and think it's just a position, whereas I believe false 9 is a whole system. And it being the whole system then requires for each and every single player within the team to be well informed with regards to what they need to do. So whenever Hotto would drift, you always needed somebody to occupy his position, which would be the 9. But you didn't see that. And that's because it's a system that it's not common to us South Africans, I think we're better suited in our teams with playing with a 9, a target man, playing with a player who's always going to occupy the box and keep those defenders busy, And when you look at Mabasa and you look at his profile and you look at the type of player he is, I think he can be a really, really great player, not just for Orlando Pirates, but also for Bafana going forward. And when you look at Pirates, I just don't think that they'll find any joy or any long-term success for as long as they play with the false 9 when they have quality strikers in Mabasa with Mahango as well and Lipasa. So I will acknowledge that Lipasa and Mahango are currently injured, but Mabasa is fully fit, so you play him. You play him. So whenever Pirates have a number 9 who's fully fit, you play him. I could even go to the extent of saying that whenever Pirates have their strikers fully fit, they could even look to fit 2 of them. So you could have, for example, Mabasa start as the 9 and then have Mhango as the second striker because he can play in those pockets of spaces in vertical zone 2, which is the left half space, vertical zone 3, which is the right half space, and vertical zone 3, which is the central zone. So, and sometimes just occupy zone 14. He can make a very good second striker. That's what I'll do with the Orlando Pirates because the types of chances they create from a qualitative perspective, they require for you to have a quality finisher, a number 9 in the box who's going to bother those 2 center halves. But anyway, let's then have a look at Swallows and let's look at how they lined up, So what we do know about Swallows is that they love their 4-3-3. So the way in which Brandon Truter approached this game, he approached it with a 4-3-3. So they then started with Chabalala in goal, first game for the young goalkeeper this season, which actually is a quality goalkeeper in my opinion. This is a goalkeeper who's come from the development ranks of Wits. He was once on the books of Wits. and he was also at Kaizer Chiefs some point, the MDC side. But he got about 5 games in the previous season in the Dstv Premiership, had 3 clean sheets. So this is a quality goalkeeper, in my opinion, as Brandon Truter gives him the nod ahead of a Jody February. So I think he had a good game, and he actually marshaled his defense very well, Didn't put a foot wrong, in my opinion, and he had a good game. It's just that he was beat by a quality goal by Tsegofatso Mabaso, which I will get into a lot later. But yeah, he started in goals. A back four of Vuyo at right back. At left back, they had Jürgen Sassmann. 2 centre halves of Sight as the right-sided centre half, and they had Sibia as the left-sided centre half. That's the back four that Swallows went with. So Swallows have grown to become a very solid team from a defensive perspective. They are not a team that concedes too many goals, and yeah, I was impressed with their defensive performances to a certain extent, but I also blame Pirates because they didn't have a natural number 9 and they didn't occupy this defense enough. They didn't test the defense enough. But as usual, Sight very solid, Sibia very solid. And moving then into the heart of midfield, they had Nyatama as the defensive midfielder, the 2 number 8s in Matlo and Chisboy Mukwena. So very experienced midfield 3, And yeah, I must say though that going forward, I think there needs to be change when we look at the Swallows midfield 3. So I'm happy with Nyatama as the defensive midfielder, happy with Mukwena, but Matlo, because when you look at Swallows from a qualitative perspective with regards to final third penetration, that's where they lack, especially when we then look at vertical zone 2, 3, and 4. We lack a player who can pop up into these spaces and then look to find that penetrative pass. So that midfield 3 has enough experience. Yes, enough experience. They rotate the ball well. But when it comes then to that final third penetration, we lack that from that midfield 3. So I think going forward, a player they have to look at is a Given Tibedi, getting into that Swallows midfield 3. To a certain extent, I would even try a Given Tibedi and a Magaman, and then have Nyatama there, just to change things up from a Swallows perspective within that midfield, because I just feel they lack that penetration and they don't create enough from a central perspective. They don't have those penetrative passes, and to a certain degree, they're over-reliant on wing play. And then when we move to the front 3, they started with Solomons and Saleng, but they would also swap during the game, and Hamaldin up front. So from the front 3, I was most impressed by Solomons. I was actually very disappointed when Brandon Truter took him off. I thought Solomons should have been kept on because he was the most threatening player. And within the first half, he was able to, on the left-hand side, he was able to beat Mabaso and... he was able to beat Bandile Shandu and whip in a very good ball where Saleng couldn't connect with the ball, which was very poor play from Saleng, in my opinion, because whenever the ball goes to the other side, the opposite flank, and the winger beats the player, you as the opposite winger, you have to attack the box, you have to attack the box, and he was slow in attacking the box, and that ball was such a great ball, which was also played into the corridor of uncertainty, in between the defenders and the goalkeeper, and that ball just went in there, in that area. When it goes in that area, if Saleng is more alert, he attacks that ball, and it's a goal, So I was very happy with Solomons with regards to his performance. Very quick player, and I think he did really, really well. But overall then, when we have a look at the whole game and how it played out, Orlando Pirates won 1-0. And when Tsegofatso Mabaso came on, he made a huge difference, and that's what I talk about, that you need a striker, you need a number 9. You need Mabasa as a reference point. It's very important that you have a striker up front who then is able then to give you that reference point and give you that focal point whenever it comes to crosses being put into the box and verticality, by virtue of the fact that he allows us to stretch the play, because whenever you've got a false 9 who's a midfielder, he's either going to drift wide or he's going to come short. And when he comes short, he's limiting our play, But that man is able to then to stretch the pitch, He gives us more yards going forward. So, very good 3 points for Orlando Pirates against very strong Swallows, and a well-deserved 3 points for Orlando Pirates. I just think that going forward, Orlando Pirates should start with an out-and-out number 9. And then when we have a look at Swallows, I think they were unfortunate to lose this game, because I just think that, yes, as much as Pirates created chances, but they were not met by anyone in the box. It's only that one chance that Pule put in and then Mabasa finished, but they were unfortunate because they were very strong on the day, and as usual, they instituted a beautiful style of play, and unfortunate because they also created chances that their players couldn't bury, But going forward then, when we have a look at Swallows, I just think Brandon Truter has to start with Solomons on the one side and Magalo on the one side. I think in the wing area, I think the pair of them could be very dangerous for Swallows. And then in the midfield, seeing a Magaman or a Tibedi come in, or seeing both of them come in. Because from a midfield perspective, we need more final third penetration from Swallows, And I just think they need a player within the midfield 3 who's going to join up in the final third and look to be that creative force. Otherwise, it is that Orlando Pirates won that game 1-0. They got 3 points from that. And and yet again, a beautiful finish by Tsegofatso Mabasa. Very impressed. Pirates should play with the number 9 going forward. But moving on then right along. The next encounter was Mamelodi Sundowns versus Kaizer Chiefs. So with regards then to Mamelodi Sundowns and how they set up, so we do know that Mamelodi Sundowns normally institute a 3-4-3, and this is how Mamelodi Sundowns set up on the day. So in goals, they started with Onyango, and then the back 3 being Rushin Duruk as the left-sided centre-half, the right-sided centre-half being Grant Kekana, and then the libero was Rivaldo Kutsia. So when we have a look then at this sort of back 3, yes, so Rivaldo Kutsia would drop in there, it becomes a back 3. Look, I think they had a very solid performance, especially considering then how many chances Kaizer Chiefs created, and how Kaizer Chiefs kept piling the pressure. But very good performance by Grant Kekana. He scored a very beautiful goal at the back post, and he had a very solid performance. To a certain degree, in my opinion, I think he was the man of the match. He had a very, very good performance. Rivaldo Kutsia, very strong in the heart of midfield, rotates the ball as usual, and whenever they were under pressure, he would often drop in and then institute a back 3, and then Rushin Duruk, always solid. That's what you're going to get. A class centre-half, very comfortable on the ball, And I must say that Rushin Duruk and Grant Kekana are forming a very strong centre-back pairing, So far, they've got 3 clean sheets, and they're doing really, really well at the heart of the defence for Mamelodi Sundowns. So, actually, that's 2 clean sheets because Grant Kekana only came on in the remaining couple of minutes against Amazulu. So that's 2 clean sheets in the league so far that they got against Chippa United and Kaizer Chiefs. And then when we move into the heart of midfield, started with Zwane and Jali. As the right wing back, they had Tapelo Murena, left wing back, Lila K. So I must say then, from a qualitative perspective, Sundowns started off strongly with regards to their lineup, and I'm very happy with this lineup for Mamelodi Sundowns. I've always believed that Zwane should start from deep, and then join the front three. So I've always believed that he should start from deep in midfield and play as the 10 for a front three, because I just think then Mamelodi Sundowns will create a lot more chances. B, there'll be a greater numerical advantage within the heart of midfield. And especially in vertical zone 2, vertical zone 3, and vertical zone 4, And I was happy with this lineup for Mamelodi Sundowns. And when we look at the front three then, you had Shalile start up top, you had Erasmus, and you had Serino starting as the 2 number 10. So from a qualitative perspective, very happy with the lineup that Sundowns went with. I think this is their strongest lineup, bar maybe having Nascimento come in as the left-sided centre-half, and then Rushin Duruk goes as the right-sided centre-half. But I think this is Mamelodi Sundowns' strongest lineup, and going forward, I think this is the lineup that Mamelodi Sundowns should look to institute. And when we have a look at Mamelodi Sundowns, look, I won't say that this was a great performance by them, but the experience showed and the class showed at the end of the day, because when it mattered most, they were able to raise their hands. Because at the end of the day, Kaizer Chiefs did enjoy more ball possession. Kaizer Chiefs created more chances. And if we have to be honest, on another day, Kaizer Chiefs win this game, But the experience that Sundowns have and the class that they have, at the end of the day, it came through, and it counts, It shows all those years that they've gained in playing in CAF Champions League, it's shown in this game. And especially regarding how they managed to manage the game, and how they killed it off as well, And so from that perspective, Sundowns did really well. And then when we look at Kaizer Chiefs, it was quite interesting to see the lineup, because, Baxter went with a 3-4-3, which would transition into a 3-4-2-1. So the three that he started with at the back, he started with Bruce started in goals. You had Matoa as the right-sided centre-half. Cardoso started as the libero, as the centre-back in the middle of the three. And then you had Tabani Dube start as the left-sided centre-half. So with regards then to this back three. So when you look at Mamelodi Sundowns and how they normally play and how you would look to combat them, I believe that within the central zone, vertical zone 3, it's important that you have a numerical advantage from a defensive perspective, and it's important that you overload, especially in vertical zone 2, 3, 4, because of how Mamelodi Sundowns play. They enjoy the numerical advantage, and they're always looking to overload the half spaces. So when you start with 3 center halves, what you do is you engage vertical zone 2, 4, and 3. So when you've engaged those, you've engaged the 2 half spaces, which Sundowns like to overload. So what you'd see is, let's just give you an illustration there. So because of how Mamelodi Sundowns like to play, once you start with 3 center halves, so you engage vertical zone 2 and vertical zone 4. So because of how Mamelodi Sundowns like to play, and then you have the 3rd center half. So they have a front 3 where in possession of the ball, at times you have 2 number 10s, at times they join up, and then you have sort of 3 strikers in a sense, 3 forwards. So because of how Mamelodi Sundowns like to play, from that perspective, Kaizer Chiefs then, I understand why Stuart Baxter would go with the back 3, because then you are engaging the most important zones where Sundowns like to play, which is 2, 3, and 4. So from that perspective, surprising lineup, and to a certain degree, I was happy with it because of how we would look to combat Sundowns and how we'd look to stop them from having the numerical overload in vertical zone 2, 3, and 4, and stopping them from playing. And when we look at it then, from a performance perspective, they ended up conceding 2 goals, and it wasn't a great defensive display. And yeah, from a tactical perspective, I understand and I like that you would go with that, because then you're looking to engage the most important aspect of how Mamelodi Sundowns play. But when we then have a look at Dube, you know, this is a player that I really like. And even though he didn't have a great performance, I still think he's a great centre-back. And he should be started alongside Njabulo Ngobo in a 2 instead of a 3. But when you look at Dube and you look at Baxter's decision to go with him, you know, I think, yeah, it was a bit suicidal in a sense, because you're looking then at a player who's being given his debut in such a high-pressure game, you know. So I personally would have not given Dube his performance. I would have not given Dube his debut, against the Mamelodi Sundowns team, especially considering the magnitude of this game, you know. I just don't feel that you start with him in this type of game, you know. And yeah, so not happy with the defensive performance from Kaizer Chiefs, especially considering how he conceded the goals. The first goal you look at is Nange. Let's start it from there. So it's around about the 6th minute. So there's a throw-in which is instituted. The ball goes into Zwane. Zwane gets the ball. Zwane is going nowhere, and Nange fouls him. And when we look at that, those are just basics. Those are just basic elements that, okay, if a player's not going anywhere, you know, and he's got his back to goal, you don't need to foul him. Zwane was going to pass the ball back. Sundowns were going to recycle again, because Kaizer Chiefs had closed the channel perfectly. But now Nange fouls him. When Nange fouls him, now Sundowns have a chance to whip in a great ball and look to get a header or a shot on target from the set piece. And then Laila K delivers very well into back post. Grant Kekana pops up. He finishes. And that's 1-0 to Sundowns within the first 6 minutes of the game. Whereas Kaizer Chiefs started really well with a high intensity, and they were creating so many chances. But against a run of play, Sundowns grab a goal. And when you look at it, you look at Nange's foul, which was unnecessary, because Zwane has his back to goal. There's nothing he can do, and it's outside of the box even. Secondly, you look at Dube's body orientation when it comes to that set piece, you know. I just feel like he didn't position his body correctly, but had he positioned his body correctly, where if he opens up his body and he's then able to see, with regards to what's happening, you're able then to judge the flight of the ball, and you're also able then to also have a look at your man that you're defending, which is Grant Kekana. So there's Grant Kekana coming in, and then there's the ball. When you open up your body, you're able then to see that, okay, Grant Kekana's coming, and the ball is coming. What do I need to do? Can I go attack the ball, or can I maintain my position, and when the ball comes, I'll jump with Grant Kekana? But his body then was square on, and he can't even see a Grant Kekana behind him. And he's backpedaling, and then he doesn't win the ball. Grant Kekana finishes, you know. So from a defensive perspective, I just think that Kaizer Chiefs were poor when you look at that back three and how we went about things. But what I will say is, from an open play perspective, Kaizer Chiefs were able to nullify Sundowns from the central zone. So when we look at vertical zone 2, vertical zone 3, and vertical zone 4, they were able to nullify them, because Sundowns goals came from balls being whipped in from out wide. So they were able then to ensure that Sundowns don't play. And at the end of the day, for the first time in a very long time, Sundowns didn't finish the game with a higher ball possession percentage. In fact, Kaizer Chiefs had more ball possession on the day. So from a central perspective, they were able then to nullify Sundowns. But like I mentioned, those defensive mistakes, you know, that's what cost Chiefs dearly. And then in midfield, they went with Nange and Cole Alexander as the two, which I think Nange had a very good performance, my perspective. Whenever he got onto the ball, Nange has A, penetrative passes. B, he's always got that diagonal. Whenever we are overloaded on one side, he's the guy who's able to take us from the left-hand side to the right-hand side with a beautiful diagonal pass. And when we then go back to what Stuart Baxter was trying to achieve by starting a three at the back. So what I believe is whenever you play against a team that dominates possession within the heart of midfield, I believe that you have to go with a defensive block of a 3-2 or a 3-3 or a 2-3 so that you're able then to institute the blocking of passing channels of vertical zone 2, vertical zone 3, and vertical zone 4. So when Chiefs were deep in their own half, what made it difficult for Sundowns to play was because of this defensive block of a 3-2. Because with this defensive block of a 3-2, you've got vertical zone 2, 3, and 4 engaged, and you ensure that the half spaces are unopen. So those pockets of spaces aren't open for Sundowns to manipulate the ball and do what they normally do. It becomes very difficult for them to do that. So that's what Kaizer Chiefs did well in open play. They were able then to combat and nullify Sundowns from that perspective. Hence why I say I think Nange had a very good performance. Cole put in a shift, as he always does, but I was not happy with his passing at times. I feel like he gave the ball away cheaply, whereas his passing at times could be a lot more measured. But moving then into the wing-back area, they did start with Blom as the right-sided winger, and then they started with Santi on the other side. So, very happy with Blom's performance. I think he's been our most consistent player during this season. He's growing each and every single game. His crosses are improving as well, and he's creating so many chances down the right-hand side for Kaizer Chiefs. And when you look at the relationship that he's establishing with the Keegan Dolly down vertical zone 5, down this side, whenever Chiefs do look to attack, it's a beautiful relationship that is being instituted in vertical zone 5 and vertical zone 4. Whenever Keegan Dolly would occupy this half space, Blom would always look to go, and they'd play lovely passes, lovely interchange of passes, and Blom would always deliver the ball into the box. So really happy with how he's developing as a player, I think he's growing in leaps and bounds. I just think that at times it's just to work on his positioning, because we did see that when Mayema came on, Mayema was then able to penetrate this channel and find that cross where Shalile finished. So sometimes just working on that defensive positioning, but very happy with Blom and how he's progressing. And then Santi started on the left side. He also started very well. He was also delivering those crosses into the box. And then our front three, Dolly started sort of as the right inside forward, sort of the right-sided number 10. Left-sided number 10, you had Nukovic, who would often drift to the left side, and then you had Biliat up front. So I just don't understand why Stuart Baxter persists with a Nukovic. I really don't understand why he persists with him in this position, where he ends up drifting to the left-hand side. I just think that in my opinion, I just think that he's useless in that position. You either play him as a 9 and then you move Biliat there, or you don't play him at all. And if you played him as a 9, I think would be a lot better, because now the two men out wide who cross the ball would always have a point of reference with regards to their crosses, because you have an out-and-out number 9 and you have a target, who is much stronger in the air than these center halves. So I just think that Nukovic has to be played as a 9 going forward. He's a lot better suited in that position. And Biliat then coming off the left and drifting into this half space, which would then be vertical zone 2 for him. I think he'd do really well, and he'd always be looking to come onto his right foot and hit those. But yeah, and when you look at how Nukovic played, I just think it was a poor performance from him. He got so many chances and he just couldn't bury them, On the day, he could have at least had a hat-trick, but he just couldn't bury them. Kama Biliat as well, didn't have the best of games, was quiet. So, overall, when you look at Kaizer Chiefs, I just think it's just one of those performances where they've got nobody to blame but themselves because of how many chances they created on the day, how much ball possession they had, and how well they played. So when we have a look at the overall scope of the game, I think Kaizer Chiefs played well. They had more ball possession, they were aggressive, and they were able to nullify Sundowns, where Sundowns couldn't institute that fluid, free, flowing passing football, and Kaizer Chiefs just didn't take their chances on the day. So it was just poor that Kaizer Chiefs didn't take their chances and they weren't able to kill off the game. I believe that the game should have been killed off in the first half by Kaizer Chiefs. Overall, Mamelodi Sundowns do walk away with the 3 points and they win this one 2-0. Kaizer Chiefs, go back to the drawing board and a lot of things have to be looked at, from a Kaizer Chiefs perspective. I still think that Stuart Baxter is getting his substitutions wrong. I don't understand how you bring on another defensive player in Mabiliso when we're chasing the game, when you have Ngobo, you've got Sikhota, and you've got Manyama off the bench. I don't understand, why don't you throw those 3 players in, especially second half. From the beginning of the second half, I'll throw those 3 players in because you can see that Sundowns are there for the taking. It's only 1-0. Attack the game and ensure that you're able to score those goals and you finish off the game. Also, Manyama taking the penalty when he's unfit and when there's players on the field, when there's senior players on the field, I just don't understand, It was just a bad day for Kaizer Chiefs. A good performance because they played really well. They created chances. But a bad day because they couldn't get the 3 points and they couldn't finish off their chances. But anyway, moving on then to the extra time segment where we have a look at the coach's corner. So in the coach's corner, we're going to have a look at the technical teams within the Dstv Premiership, most notably the 4 teams that I've just done a post-match analysis on. So we're going to look at Swallows, Orlando Pirates, Kaizer Chiefs, and Mamelodi Sundowns. So I will start then with Mamelodi Sundowns as they were making the most headlines in the past week with regards to the coaches, and with that being said, I just thought that it would be a very interesting conversation. You guys at home will let me know how you guys feel, with regards to the technical team. So I will start by saying that I understand and fully acknowledge where football is moving. Modern day football is moving to a space and an area where it's become a lot more broader and it's become a lot more advanced. Hence why we're seeing the technical teams becoming so broad and so extensive. That's why we now see co-head coaches and a senior head coach at a Mamelodi Sundowns. And when you look at a Mamelodi Sundowns and you look at the 3 coaches, I think you've got 3 quality coaches in there, However, I personally don't advocate for that, and I don't advocate for it because when things start to go badly at the club, who takes accountability and responsibility when the ship starts to sink? When the ship starts to sink, if you ever had to sack, who would you sack? Do you sack all 3? Do you sack 1 or do you sack 2? And that's why I don't believe in this this whole notion of having 2 co-head coaches. I just don't believe in that system of coaching. I'm a traditionalist when it comes to coaching, and I believe that there are certain traditional nuances that we should retain within modern day society. So yes, I understand it's modern day football, but I just think it's better off having 1 head coach and then 1 assistant or 2 assistant coaches. So I don't believe in having too many head coaches at the helm because we need people who are going to take responsibility, and we also need for there to be 1 clear vision. And when you look at Sundowns, at times, I think that there will be friction amongst the 3 coaches, especially looking at their egos, looking at their profiles, and looking at what they've done within Dstv Premiership football. I just think that we just need 1. And I'm going to go as far as saying that playing devil's advocate on this one, I don't think that it's going to last for too long. I foresee one of them leaving for another opportunity or going to another team within the Dstv Premiership or within Africa. I just don't see it lasting because I just don't think that at the end of the day that it works out when it comes to the inner workings of the relationship of the coaches. So yes, the team on the field may win and do well by virtue of experience, but when it boils down to certain nuances such as the dynamics of the working relations, I just think there's just too many coaches there, in my opinion. Moving on then to Swallows. When we have then a look at Swallows, they've got Brandon Truter and Simo Dladla, who then is the assistant coach. So Simo Dladla rose to prominence at Richards Bay, where he instituted a beautiful brand of passing football, and his team played really well. He unearthed some quality players as well. He was always a very offensive-minded coach who always played on the front foot. He now joins Brandon Truter. Truter's at the helm. So another situation where I just feel that Simo Dladla would be much better off in the Dstv Premiership as a head coach, and I just don't advocate for coaches who've been head coaches before who go on and become assistant coaches. I just think it does our football a disservice as opposed to progressing it, because Simo Dladla can go to another team within the Dstv Premiership and actually look to add his expertise where that team can strengthen, And then moving on then to Kaizer Chiefs, which then would be a great example with regards to this segment. So Kaizer Chiefs have Stuart Baxter at the helm and 2 assistant coaches in Shepherd and Arthur Zwane. So with regards to that, I like that, because at the end of the day, we know who is the head coach. We know who the buck ends and starts with, and that's Stuart Baxter. He's got the final say, and I just think it's better off when a technical team is made up of one head coach as opposed to 2 head coaches or 3 head coaches. I just don't advocate for that, And I just also think that it's better when a head coach is working with a younger coach who's still learning the ropes, who hasn't become a head coach as of yet, who's still very much poised in learning that role of assistant coach, with one day becoming a head coach, as opposed to working with a guy who's been a head coach before and then now working as an assistant coach. And then when we move on to Orlando Pirates, with Orlando Pirates, they've got Mandla Ncigazi and Fadlu Davids. That's also another situation that I don't advocate for. I just feel that they must make Mandla Ncigazi the head coach and Fadlu Davids as the assistant coach. I just don't think that it's healthy for the team. Yes, they've picked up 3 points. Yes, there's a good energy within the team. But at the end of the day, we need a man who is going to be termed as the head coach, who's going to assume the responsibility of being at the head of the ship. And that's what's most important when it comes to head coaches, and why I say that I'm cut from that old school and from that traditional nuance of having one head coach. It's the responsibility that needs to be assumed. And I just think Mandla Ncigazi needs to be made the head coach for Orlando Pirates. But anyway, thank you very much for tuning in to yet another special episode of Disky Talk with Luyolo. I thoroughly enjoyed this one, where I had a look at 2 of the hottest encounters this past weekend in Orlando Pirates versus Swallows, which ended 1-0 in Orlando Pirates' favor, and Mamelodi Sundowns versus Kaizer Chiefs, which ended 2-0 in Mamelodi Sundowns' favor. And the extra time segment, where I had a look at the 4 different technical teams. So at home, do let me know, what do you make of the different technical teams and how broad these technical teams are becoming with regards to how many head coaches that we're starting to see at one football club. But anyway, thank you very much for tuning in to yet another special episode of Disky Talk with Liolo. Thank you very much for supporting. Signing out.